The Saratoga Springs Preservation Foundation was established in 1977 to promote the preservation and enhancement of the architectural, cultural, and landscape heritage of Saratoga Springs. We do this through educational programs like tonight's program, tours and strolls, as well as providing owners of historic buildings with technical assistance, advocating for best preservation practices within the city, commenting on exterior changes and new construction within the city, and at the Saratoga Racecourse. The foundation also undertakes restoration projects like the Spirit of Life and Spencer Trask Memorial, First Baptist Church, and our current rehabilitation project at 65 Violet Street. Preservation does not just happen, it takes effort. I would like to remind you all that we are a membership-based organization. So if you're not already a member, please join us. You can show your support for preserving Saratoga Springs year-round by becoming a member, and you will receive advance notice of events and discounts on programs. I will drop the link to join in the chat, or if you're interested in donating, we will add that link as well. I'm sure many of you have seen our communications about the rehabilitation of 65 Violet Street, but for those who may not be aware, the foundation purchased 65 Violet Street in May 2021, and we are nearing the end of our rehabilitation. The scope of the work for this project included environmental remediation, completing necessary structural repairs, and installing a new roof. In addition, we repaired and painted the clapboard as well as restored the historic windows and front porch. The final details for the porch restoration, remaining painting, and the installation of the restored front door will be finished in the upcoming months, as long as it doesn't keep snowing. And then we will be completing the planned scope of work for the building. The foundation will sell it to someone who will complete the interior and be a good steward for years to come. And any proceeds from the sale will enable us to take on other special projects that benefit our community. Now, Historic Homes Tour. Our largest fundraiser of the year is coming up on Saturday, May 11th with the Historic Homes Tour. We will be offering it in person and virtually again this year. The tour will take place in the North Broadway neighborhood of Saratoga Springs, and it is already shaping up to be quite the tour. Keep an eye on our website for full details, but if you go to our website, you can join the honorary committee or become a corporate sponsor, and tickets will be put up on our website soon. Okay, so I have plugged enough of our events. And I am, again, I had mentioned this earlier. If you have any questions, those will be addressed at the end of the program. And feel free to just keep putting them into the chat box, and Sydney and I will be keeping an eye on that. And as a final reminder, please remain muted throughout the program. Sydney and I will also be helping if anybody doesn't know how to mute themselves, but just a friendly reminder. Okay, so getting on to the program. Corinne Scirocco was born and raised in Saratoga Springs. She attended St. Clement's School and later on continued at St. Clement's as a crossing guard. She has been a substitute teacher and has enjoyed being a lifelong hairstylist. With 2 sons, 2 cherished daughter-in-laws, and 4 adored grandchildren, her family brings her boundless joy. She is the registrar of the Saratoga chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution, with previous roles as regent, state commemorative event chair, and state constitution chair. Corinne is deeply committed to historic preservation. Her dedication to connecting people with the past underscores her advocacy in the preservation movement. Corinne's commitment to community, passion for education, and the preservation movement have not only helped safeguard tangible pieces of history, but have also fostered a sense of belonging and connection among individuals seeking to understand and appreciate their roots. We also have Heather Ann Hosford Mabee, who was born in Phoenix, Arizona to Frank Hobbs Hosford and Marie Louise Schroeder. She is married to Douglas Tim Mabee and lives in Saratoga Springs, New York. They enjoy sharing time with their 5 grandchildren and 2 granddaughters. She has a Bachelor of Science degree in business from the American College of Switzerland. She's been a marketing assistant for the Wally Finley Galleries, assistant to the press director for the 1980 Lake Placid Winter Olympics. She was the owner of the Union Coach House restaurant, account executive at Ed Louise Associates, and manager of Allardyce Party Rental and Belmonte and Sons Tent and Events. She is now retired and busy with various volunteer opportunities. To name a few, a governor-appointed Saratoga/Capital District State Park Commissioner, board member of the Saratoga Performing Arts Center, Saratoga 250th Commission, and the Flower and Fruit Mission. For genealogical societies at the moment, she is the New York State DAR Women Issue Committee Chair, the Saratoga Chapter DAR Regent, and second Vice President for the Daughters of 98, which is for the Spanish-American War. She believes that giving back to her community is very important. And now I will turn it over to Heather to start the program, and I will share the slides.
Good evening, everyone. And we're so glad to have you here to be part of this presentation for Ellen Hardin Walworth. Ellen Hardin Walworth said, "A respect for the flag teaches a respect for the right of others. It teaches a regard for the property of other, a lesson much needed." Ellen Hardin Walworth considered the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution as one of the most important movements of the century. As a founder, as the Secretary General elected at the organizing meeting, as the founding editor of the American Monthly Magazine, and as the Vice President General and founder of the Saratoga Chapter, Ellen Hardin Walworth gave noble service. She was born on October 20th, 1832 to Colonel John J. and Sarah Ellen Smith Hardin in Jacksonville, Illinois. She was the eldest daughter. Colonel Hardin was a lawyer and a Whig member of the Congress from 1843 to 1845. Ellen attended Jacksonville Academy. At the age of 36, Colonel John Hardin was killed at the Battle of Buena Vista in the Mexican War on July 14, 1847, while leading his regiment. In 1851, Ellen's mother married Chancellor Reuben Hyde Walworth, the last Chancellor of New York State. The family moved to Saratoga Springs, New York. 1 year later, on July 19, 1852, Ellen, who was called Nellie by the family, at 20 years old, married her stepbrother. Mansfield Tracy Walworth, a lawyer and eventually a minor novelist, the youngest son of the chancellor, Ellen converted to Roman Catholicism to the disapproval of her mother. The couple was married at St. Peter's Church right here in Saratoga Springs, and the wedding reception was held at the family homestead Pine Grove. For many years, the young couple made their residence at Pine Grove with their parents. And if you go on Broadway, all the way where the Stewart shop is, across from the city center, that is where Pine Grove was located. Ellen had 6 children. 2 died very young in the first 9 years of marriage, despite the fact that her husband was an, quote, unstable person, unquote, with, quote, a very violent temper, quote, who physically assaulted her. In 1861, she separated from her husband and moved with her children to live on a farm near Louisville, Kentucky, with Ellen's mother's family, the Hardin family, who were well known and prosperous in Kentucky. After several failed attempts to reconcile, and another child, she went to Washington in 1868 and secured a government clerkship. Ellen tried reconciling one last time after she lost her job, but she left Mansfield permanently in January 1871 after he physically assaulted her while she was pregnant with her 8th child, Sarah Margaret. She returned to Saratoga and obtained a limited divorce. After her father-in-law, Reuben Hyde Walworth, passed away in 1868 and left her in charge of the family affairs, Ellen opened a girls' boarding school at the Pine Grove. She operated the school for 15 years before returning to Washington for health reasons. Meanwhile, her former husband continued to harass her. Eventually, her oldest son, Frank, 19 years old, shot his father 4 times to death in a New York City hotel room on June 3rd, 1873. He went to the police and confessed. Frank was sentenced to life imprisonment, but Ellen studied the law and secured his release in 1877 by reason of insanity. New York Governor Robinson pardoned, saying the young man was not legally responsible for killing his father due to threats by the father to kill his former wife, Ellen, and the son, Frank. In 1876, Mrs. Walworth successfully directed a fundraising movement to restore Mount Vernon, home of George Washington. During that same year, she took on the responsibility of collecting women's work, creating a fine display of domestic and fancy articles, pictures, and other skilled work for the Women's Pavilion at the World Exposition of 1876. On September 20th, 1878, the Salvation Army was tendered the exclusive use of the Walworth home at 316 East 15th Street in New York City, and with the permission of Ellen, named it Camp Walworth. Mrs. Walworth was at the time the Director General of the Women's War Relief Association, which was the forerunner of the American Red Cross. During the decade of the 1880s, Ellen was honored by being chosen as the only woman on the Saratoga Battlefield Monument Commission. She served as a trustee on this commission for many years, and in addition as the commission's historian for a considerable period. She dedicated her services to the completion of the monument, which had been originally dedicated on October 17, 1877. Mrs. Walworth took on the responsibility of outlining a plan to mark the points of interest at the Saratoga battlefield. 1890 was a year of great importance to Ellen Hardin Walworth. She formulated the plans that culminated in the organization of the Daughters of the American Revolution National Society on October 11, 1890. In a tribute paid to Ellen by her granddaughter, Clara Grant Walworth, after her death, it was not until the year 1890 that what she considered the crowning work of her life was accomplished when, on August 9th, 1890, Miss Eugenia Washington and Miss Mary Desha met with her at her home, the Langham, in Washington, D.C. There, these 3 women founded the National Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution. The first public meeting was held on the 11th of October, 1890, in Washington, D.C. Their labors finished, these 3 founders have passed on to a higher life. A highly educated woman, Mrs. Walworth was gifted with great literacy ability and was widely known as an author. In 1891, she published The Battles of Saratoga, a detailed history of the battles in Saratoga and a visitor guide to the Saratoga battlefield. She also was the first editor and the founder of the American Monthly Magazine, a publication of the National Society DAR and now known as the American Spirit Magazine. In addition to being a prolific writer, she was also a lecturer. Two of the most important works were her paper on the value of building a national archive, which was the forerunner of today's ongoing movement. The first lecture was given before the National Congress of Historic Associations. The second lecture was given in 1893 to the Library of Congress at the World's Fair about colonial women. Besides lectures, Ellen suggested and made the practice of having portraits of the wives of our president hung in the White House. On December 14th, 1891, Mrs. Walworth was presented a resolution to the National Society DAR, which reads as follows: a committee be appointed to consider ways and means of erecting a fireproof building and founding a home for the society, which shall also be the Memorial Hall of the Daughters of the American Revolution, and that the said committee be instructed to bring an early report to the board. This resolution is recognized as the official beginning of the Memorial Continental Hall in Washington, D.C. for the Daughters of the American Revolution. Ellen Hardin Walworth studied for her law degree in 1897 at the University of New York and was admitted to the bar in New York State and Washington, D.C. She specialized in parliamentary law and wrote a booklet on the subject. She took great pride in this achievement and loved to appear in academic dress. Some of the formal portraits of distinguished daughters at early continental congresses include Ellen in mortarboard, cap, and gown. As a natural leader and organizer, Mrs. Walworth founded other groups in the Saratoga area, as well as on a national scale. In addition to the Saratoga Chapter DAR, the Bemis High Society Children of the American Revolution, the Rabina Hyde Walworth Auxiliary to the United States Spanish-American War Veterans, the American Historical Association, and the Mothers Club, the forerunner of today's PTA. Tragedy again struck the life of Ellen when on September 18, 1898, her beloved youngest daughter, Rabina Hyde Walworth, died in New York City from typhoid fever. A quote from the Saratoga Chapter regent, Frances Ingalls. As a voluntary nurse during the Spanish-American War, 1898, she had offered her services in caring for typhoid patients. After her last patient had been discharged, Rabina contracted the disease and gave her life as surely as any soldier on the field of battle. Rabina Hyde Walworth was buried at Greenwich Cemetery, and the DAR erected a monument. Over 4,000 people attended the unveiling of the monument on October 18, 1899. And the inscription reads, "She served her country, not as a man, but better still, as only a woman can." Ellen Hardin Walworth never fully recovered from the loss of her daughter, Rabina. And the joy had escaped from her life, and she valiantly carried on with some of her activities, but her life was not the same. In 1909, Ellen wrote the copy for 7 signs to be erected in the Saratoga battlefield to inform the public of the battlefield sites and encourage them to preserve the battlefield. Only one has survived after being a barn stall divider for a period of time. This sign now is at the Saratoga Historical Society, Brookfield Museum in Boston Spa. An article in the Saratogian on September 18th, 1913 states, "A tablet to the trustees of the Saratoga Battlefield Monument Commission was unveiled at Saratoga on the 18th of September, 1914. Among the other helpers was listed the name of Mrs. Ellen Hardin Walworth. Through many years, she gave personal service of high order unsparingly to the cause. Her presence at our yearly meetings gave a touch of grace, but also from her lips came wise counsel." Ellen died June 23rd, 1915 in Washington, D.C. at the age of 84. At the memorial service at Greenwood Cemetery in the Walworth family plot, Mrs. Frederick Menges, the Saratoga chapter regent, read the following resolutions. "It seems fitting that on this, the anniversary of our national independence, we, the members of the Saratoga chapter, Daughters of the American Revolution, should reverently express our love and devotion to the memory of Ellen Hardin Walworth, founder of the National Society and mother of our chapter. We honor her for her wonderful ability as an organizer, as an educator, and as a patriotic woman. Her masterful mind is nowhere better shown than to the Constitution of our National Society, drafted when none could foresee its remarkable growth, but which with few alteration has proven adequate to all of its needs. We have often enjoyed the products of her pen in poetry and prose. Her unflagging patriotism was an inspiration to us in the Spanish-American War, for which cause she gave of her own flesh and blood. Many years ago, Mrs. Walworth, in speaking of death, remarked, 'Say of me in labor, she found rest.' Ellen Hardin Walworth died just a few weeks before the 25th anniversary of the DAR she had helped found. A piece of tribute. She leaves us a heritage of faithful work, of absolute devotion to duty as she saw it, of unfailing readiness to sacrifice when needs arise, and constant fidelity to the highest ideals of our society." At the passing of Clara Walworth, the daughter of Ellen's son, Frank Walworth, she left all the contents of the Walworth home, Pine Grove, to the Saratoga Springs History Museum in the Canfield Casino. And today, if you are exploring Saratoga Springs, you will see 3 signs. One of them recognizes where Pine Grove was located, and that Pine Grove sign is a site of where the Walworth home was from 1923 to 1952. And the sign is in front of the Stewart shop across from our city center. Second, there is a sign in Congress Park that is dedicated to Ellen Hardin Walworth, which was put up by the New York State Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution. And the last is in the Walworth family plot in Greenwich Cemetery. You can see all the members of the Walworth family. Rabina Hyde Walworth's actual obelisk is in a separate part away from the family plot, but you can find that also in Greenwich Cemetery. And these are all pieces that have been put up in the Saratoga Springs area by the Daughters of the American Revolution. I just think Ellen was an extraordinary woman. She dealt with so many tragedies in her life, but she still stood up and went on with her life and did so many amazing, incredible things. And it has been such a pleasure to give you a little bit of information about her extraordinary life. And now I'd like to pass this on to my fellow DAR member, Corinne Scirocco, who's the registrar of our DAR chapter. And she is going to give you a little information about if you are interested in becoming a member of the Daughters of the American Revolution on how you do that. And just a little bit of information about our chapter. We are very interested in supporting our local charities, our veterans in the area. We do essay contests, and we love to promote American history within the Saratoga County area. So I'm going to pass this on to Corinne now. And thank you all for listening.
Hi, I'm so happy to have you with us tonight. I'm going to tell you a little bit on how to become a DAR member. Membership in the Daughters of the American Revolution honor and preserve the legacy of our patriots' ancestors. Over 200 years ago, American patriots fought, sacrificed for the freedoms we enjoy today. As a member of the DAR, through participation in the National Society's various programs and activities, you can continue this legacy by actively supporting historic preservation, promotion of education, and patriotic endeavors. So to be eligible, you must be 18 years or older, be a direct descendant of an ancestor who aided in the course of the American independence between the Battle of Lexington on April 19th, 1775, and the withdrawal of the British troops from New York on November 26, 1783. So in order to prepare your application for membership, the chapter regent will guide you on how to obtain the necessary documents and the information required for proof of lineage. You can also get started by researching these sites at nsdar.org. Worksheets and tips are also available at this site. We have a DAR library, and it has the genealogical research system. It's available at the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution for the purpose of general research and assisting with the DAR membership process. So on how we get started, the first step is to have your birth certificate. You would be, I'm going to classify you as generation 1. You'd need your birth certificate. You would need, if you're married, your husband's birth certificate, marriage certificate. If your husband is passed, then we need a death certificate. The second generation would be your parents. You would need their birth certificates, their death certificates if they're deceased, their marriage certificates. The third generation would be your grandparents, and we ask for the same information. We use vital records for the first 3 generations. As you go farther back, it's harder to get vital records. But in these vital records, there's birth certificates, which must have the parent's name on it. We kind of like follow the links. One link, one parent to another child, child to parent, back and forth. We can use obituaries in these 3 generations, as long as they have the birth date, the death date, and the parents mentioned. We also can use baptismal certificates, death certificates. You can use obits, pictures of tombstones, prayer cards. Must have complete dates of birth, death, and parents on the first 3 generations. Obituary pictures of tombstones, they must be legible dates and names on the stones themselves so that you can see it, read it. When we reach the 4th generation, we can use census, tax lists, Bibles, county records, books, using books, a lot of the, like say you might have the history of a certain area. Massachusetts, Connecticut have a lot of those books, New York. You must show the front page, the inside information, and the page number. See, land deeds, wills. When you reach we also have to know who published the books. So working on a database of the DAR Genealogical Office, it was created and maintained by the staff of the DAR Office of the Register General, with a few exceptions. The data is taken from various members' applications and supplements applications. New records, informations are added on a daily basis. For additional information on searching these databases, please refer to the overview and help section of the Ancestor tab. So if my sister will say, I'm still trying to get her in, she's fighting me, but all she would have to do is just prove her first generation to my parents, and then she's in. So a lot of times you may have an ancestor that you can connect up with any of the generations, and that's easy because then you can use their information. Sometimes we do an application that is so well done that we prove that it isn't correct, and then DAR redlines it until further information comes to correct it. I've done adoption papers. One lady came, she got on Ancestry, found some relatives. One of her cousins said, you can belong to the DAR. Well, she found out who her mother was, who had passed away, and her stepdad, had all her mom's paperwork. So she did have a living aunt we asked her to get her birth certificate. So it showed that her mother and the aunt had the same parents. So then we had the aunt take a DNA test, and Lord and behold, it came back that they either had to be related aunt or sister. So that can be done also, but you have to go back to your biological parent if you can. So we also have the spelling of names. Back in the day, everybody spelled the way they sounded out a name. DAR actually is, as tedious as they are about everything, are not with the spelling. So, but they use the one spelling that they like, and then they'll correct it on your paperwork. So, but it doesn't keep you out from being a member. So there is also a dar.org/library/record-copy that you can also go on to find information. The descendant database is an index of names found on the lineage page of the DAR applications and supplements. The purpose of the database is to help those looking for the DAR Patriot line to identify the best possible record copy to order. Once the connection has been found using the information in this database, you can order a copy from DAR and use that for your application, or apply it to the information. The database contains lineage from the most original application, starting with the national number 1 through, we have over 1 million DAR members at this point. Also included are the lineage from the most supplement applications, added volumes 1 through 1004. This database is possible thanks to the efforts of over 3,000 volunteers. Then we have the GRC, that is Genealogical Records Committee. They report every year. They have done over 20,000 transcripts, volumes, Bible records, cemetery records, along with many other types of transcribed or abstract genealogical sources. So after we get to getting our information on an application, I don't know if you could actually see this, but this is an application that is, this is one of mine. My cousin Mary has done all of my family work before computers. Everybody in my chapter wants a cousin Mary. On here is all of the information down to my ancestor. On the next page, everything that you put on page 2 must be proven on page 3, which is this page.
There.
So here we go. My information, my parents, my grandparents, off of my cousin Mary's papers, and down to the final ancestor. So if somebody wanted to look up John Fish, who is our most exciting ancestor that we have out of the 10, he was a spy. He was a pages are sticking together. I apologize. And on the last page is where you put the information of the ancestor service. And this tells where they fought, what capacity they fought, what state they fought, and then they're given an ancestor number. And then they tell exactly what they did do. And I will go to, let's see, where he had correspondence of George Washington, Sons of the American Revolution, Sons of the Liberty Chapter, Revolutionary War historical articles, letters to Philip, John Schuyler, to George Washington, to George Clinton, and so on. And then it's tells who he was married to and his children. And to find proof for that, you can go to the National Archives of the Revolutionary War rolls for proof of service. The proof of service that you can use is the signers of the Declaration of Independence, military service, and what they participated in. You don't really have to have fought basically in the war. You could have cleared roads, made bullets, all kinds of stuff, I guess. Okay, so applying for membership, you must document the lineage back to the ancestor who aided the cause of the American Revolution. These efforts come through military, civil, and patriotic service must occur during the period between April 19th, 1775, and as I said before, November 1783 with the withdrawal of the British troops. So you can do Army, Navy, Continental establishments, the state Navy, state and local militia, private, military, naval service performed by the French nationals and the American theater of war. Members of the Boston Tea Party, signers of the Oath of Fidelity and Support, Oath of Allegiance. You could be a doctor, a nurse rendering aid to the wounded, ministers, finishing a substitute for military service, prisoner of war or a refugee from occupational forces, prisoners on the British ship, Old Jersey or other prison ships, service of the Spanish troops under Galvez or the Louisiana military after the 24th December 1776, services performed by French nationals within the colonies or in Europe in support of the American cause, those who rendered material aid in Spanish America by supplying cattle forces after December 24th, 1776, those who applied in Virginia for certificates of rights to lands or settlements, those who are entitled to and were granted pre-exemption rights, those who took the oath of office to the Commonwealth of Virginia from October 1779 to November 1783, those who rendered material aid, supported the cause of American independence by furnishing supplies with or without loaning money or providing munitions. Some states reactivated special tax laws to raise money for supplies, payments for those supplies, supply taxes, and consider patriotic service.
So if you're interested in becoming a member of the DAR, we would love to have you reach out to Corinne. She's very knowledgeable. She's done over 80 applications. So she's very knowledgeable on how to do an application for the DAR. And we would love to help you do that process. Or if you're just interested in doing some research, we are here to help you do that research. So we are so glad that you all came tonight. If you have any questions, please post them here, or you can reach out to us separately. We would be glad to hear from you. We do have, it was posted up earlier, we do have a email, which is Saratoga Daughters 1143@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you and love to answer any questions.
Oh, I apologize, Heather. I accidentally muted you because I had a question. I will ask you to unmute in just one second, but I was just curious, what is your favorite thing about being a member of the DAR? I think we'll start with that one for both of you. And then my second question is, what is your either favorite thing or the thing that you admire most about Ellen? And that one's for both of you as well.
You doing JoJo?
Is- for myself, Heather, one of my favorite two things that I love about DAR and has gotten me more involved. One of the things is I love history. I've loved history since I was in high school. I had an amazing teacher in high school who just led me on this path to love history, and I've loved it ever since then. And it's amazing how those teachers can really make a difference in your life when they really inspire you to love something for the rest of your life. So my love of history has inspired me to be part of the Daughters of the American Revolution. I wanted to study my family's history, find out about where we came from and all of that. But when I became a member of DAR, because of all of the different areas that we support, our history, historic preservation, education, and one of the other big pieces we do is honoring our veterans. And to me, it is so important to honor our veterans, recognize our veterans. And our chapter is very supportive of the Guardian House, which is in Boston Spa, which supports our lady veterans who have had some difficulties in their lives, and they need some support to get themselves to that next chapter of being back on their own and doing their own things. And I have been really glad to be part of supporting that through my chapter. Corinne, what's something that you've really loved?
Well, I really liked working with the children. We've gone to some daycare, some day camps. And in the summertime, we've had them write with quill pens with ink. We'd bring worksheets. Well, one half did that. The other half was watching films that were their age limit on Paul Revere or George Washington or whatever in the Revolution. They really seem to enjoy that. We've had other things that we've gone into schools. Fourth grade is usually the time when they start to learn about the Revolution, and that was fun. Sometimes we dress in period clothing. Last spring, I was a chapter leader for a group of children. We had 3 groups. They learned how to write with a quill pen. We also learned one thing that I did not know, which there is a lot, but how to make patterns out of flowers and rocks. It was quite interesting on linen. And that's how they did that back in the 1700s, how they made prints on cloth. And they really seemed to like pounding the rocks. We had a Boston tea party. We actually had tea that was horrible because all the good tea went overboard. So they had to make do, and we got to sample that. So that probably was a hardship in itself, because this was not tea. Not quite sure what it was, but it wasn't tea. But yeah, I like working with the kids a lot. I like the history part of it. The historic preservation is another one of my favorites that I really do love. We also have a lot of fun cleaning tombstones. That sounds crazy, but we do. We have a good time with that. So we do so many things that, we just, I don't know. What else do you?
I think Nicole had another question for us.
Okay. Nicole?
My other question was just about what your favorite thing about Ellen is, or what you admire the most.
For me, what I admire most is this is a woman, as I said at the end of the presentation, she had a very abusive marriage, yet she didn't allow that to stop her to continuing going on in her life. She had a son that ended up in prison. She went and studied the law to be able to get her son out of prison. And she just continued. Nothing swayed her or made her feel badly about life. When things were down and out, she just kept going day after day. And she just didn't mind getting out in our community and making it this a better place for all of us. I mean, it just amazes me that she started basically the Red Cross. I mean, here in our town, she created the what is now was called the Mothers Club, which is now the PTA that's in the schools across the country. I mean, she made sure that there are portraits in the White House of every single first lady that never been done before. She was the only woman who was on the Saratoga Battlefield Association. Yet at the same time, she wrote books and she wrote poetry and she raised 8 children, ran a boarding house. I mean, an extraordinary woman who just never let anything stop her from continuing going on. All right.
Yeah, that's hard to add to. So she's just a very strong woman. So you have to, just appreciate that. She just kept right on going.
Nicole, anything else?
There are no questions in the comments, but if anybody has a question, feel free to drop it in now.
Is anybody, yeah, we'd be glad to help you with anything that we can. Anybody interested in joining our group? Looking up your ancestors, the history. It's kind of fun. I always tell everybody to start with themselves first. It's not hard. Just kind of get yourself and then go to your parents and then your parents' ancestors. It's really quite interesting and what you can find out. Even if it doesn't lead to a patriot, but it's, the other day I got notified that I'm a woman of the pioneer. One of my ancestors went across west in a wagon, covered wagon. So yeah, they have a group for that too.
It's also a great way to start family discussions about your heritage and about your family and where you came from and where everything started from. And you get, all of a sudden, there are amazing stories that an aunt tells you or that a cousin tells you that you never even knew existed within your family. So maybe you don't have a patriot that came over, but it is so important to get those family stories. And if there is one thing I can recommend, if you are, if you have if your parents are alive or if your grandparents are alive, if you can get them, take your phone and do a video of them talking about the family and telling a family story. Those are cherished pieces you will never get back again. And I would just highly recommend that you do that to preserve your family history so that the next generation and the generation after that knows about your family and where you came from and where it all started from.
And it's easy today. You have, Ancestry, MyHeritage, Family Search, just all kinds. Even sometimes you can just put in the computer, John Smith, and just, born, say 1800, lives in Connecticut, and you come up with stuff. So it could connect you to that, to your family. So it's a lot easier today than years ago when you had to do legwork. Go to look through microfiche.
Nicole, anything else?
Yes, and thank you, Sherry, for pointing it out that Kathy asked a question about why are the dates on Ellen's tombstone in Greenridge Cemetery wrong?
There are 2 tombstones for Ellen in the cemetery. There's a tombstone and there's a memorial plaque. And we personally, I was not alive when those were put up. So I do not know specifically why the dates are different on the 2 of them. One says one date and one says another. We do know what her dates are. But unfortunately, Kathy, I can try to do some more research and find out why, but unfortunately, I wasn't around when those 2. One is a plaque, one is a stone that was put up by the actual DAR, and one was actually put up by her family. So, and I do not know why they ended up putting the wrong dates on there. I'll see if I can do some more research and find out for you. Anything else, Nicole?
I think that may be it. Any final questions, anyone? All right, well, Corinne and Heather, if you have any final comments or thoughts, feel free to impart your wisdom. This was a fascinating program, and I am just so impressed by Ellen.
She's an amazing woman, very amazing. You can actually, the third floor of the History Museum is all of Walworth. All the rooms are all of the Walworth family. If you've never been, it's nice to go there and see it.
And if you're a DAR member, you can go for free.
Another reason to join. That's perfect. Well, again, if anybody needs anything in the future, feel free to contact us at the foundation. We're happy to put you together with Heather and Corinne for any research questions, anything that you need. Feel free to let us know. I want to say thank you to Corinne and Heather. This was a great program and so interesting, and I'm glad that we could, during Women's History Month, commemorate Ellen's life. So thank you both so much for joining us tonight. And I appreciate everybody joining us on the call. Feel free to reach out, keep an eye on our website. We have lots of programs coming up in April and May. Again, I mentioned the Historic Home Store, May 11th. Feel free to mark your calendar. And if no one else has any questions, then I will say goodnight to everyone. Thank you all so much for coming, and have a great evening.